Welcome to the lecture Knowledge Engineering with Semantic Web Technologies. This is lecture 1, Knowledge Engineering and the Web of Data. And today I want to give you a short review of the history of the web. So this is the first lecture in this series. So when did the web start? It started all about at the same time as the landing on the moon in 1969. So in 1969 the ARPANET started, and this was of course the first computer network, the internet by that time. And you see here these three guys, JCR Licklider, Robert Taylor and Larry Roberts, who were responsible for the design of the very first computer network. And these people already had a big vision, and they really thought of something that might come close what really happened in the development of the web. So they were saying by the time we are entering a technological age in which we will be able to interact with the richness of living information, not merely in the passive way that we have been accustomed to using books and libraries, but as active participants in an ongoing process, bringing something to it through our interaction with it and not simply receiving something from it by our connection to it. And this was a sentence from a paper, a scientific paper published by JCR Licklider 1 year before the ARPANET with its 4 single nodes really started. So they foresaw something great in the future, a revolution in the area of media. You are not only a consumer, but you will be able also to participate and to interact. And this was something completely new. So let's see how the internet grew. In the next years after the start in 1969, where only a few sites have been connected here in the west of the USA, then it switched in the next year to the east coast of the USA, and it grows further in March 1972 and July 77. You see that there were in the end several, almost 100 nodes in the internet. But by that time, of course, the internet had nothing to do with the web we know today. Why is it so? So let's just look at the first generation of the internet. So it was so-called computer-centered processing. And you can distinguish these generations or phases of the information age if you look in the way how do we get to the information? How does the user get the information? And in the first generation, the internet generation, you had these the only mean really to get to the information was via these terminal windows. Maybe you can remember these terminal windows. So, and to get to information that is not local on your computer but somewhere else, somewhere abroad, you had first to open a terminal, then you had to connect to a remote computer. For that you had to know the address of the remote computer. Then on the remote computer you have to have a look on the file system, and you had to retrieve the file system of the foreign computer. And then you had to download a file that you had identified in the file system of the remote computer to your local computer. And only then, when the download was finished, you were able to read the file you have downloaded on your local computer. So this is pretty complicated. This is tedious. You need a lot of information. And of course, information access then requires expert knowledge. So you have to know about how to type all these necessary commands into the terminal. Therefore, this information access was very expensive, and also the retrieval process was very expensive. And this was the problem, that it really did not get into public and was not popularized in the way it was later or today. So the starting point that it also attracted more people, not only in academia or in business, was in the 1990s when the World Wide Web was born. It was born on the European Nuclear Research Center CERN in 1990, and these two guys, Tim Berners-Lee and Robert Caillot, they were responsible for creating first an internal system for this research center for document management. What they wanted to do, these scientists in this large nuclear research center, of course, they had to manage lots of publications, they had to manage lots of experiments. And on these experiments, sometimes several hundreds of scientists, of course, participated. And therefore, they needed an electronic system to document everything and to manage these documents. And this was the fundament or the basis, the core of the original web, because they had the idea, yeah, we can also use this outside of our research facility. We can use this in the world, on the internet. And then something happened. The web, as we know it today, was born. And in the web, as you know it, that we don't have this first system-related concept or access to get to our information. There is a document-centered processing concept. It means basic structure of the web are documents, and these documents, they are written in HTML. It's a language where you have the possibility to refer to other documents with the help of hyperlinks. And this hyperlinking then creates a huge graph, a huge network of documents. And now you have as access means the so-called browser, and with a browser it's much more easier to access the documents, of course. Of course, in the first place you have to know which address to access, but then you open the browser, you load the document, and then to get to the next document, you simply click on one of the links. And this, of course, is much more easier for the simple user. So you don't need the expert knowledge, you need it in before. And you have a very simple way to access the information. And to search on a web like this, search engines were created, like, for example, Google or Bing or Yahoo. And with the help of these search engines, you were able to find information on the web. And this now was much more easier than before, when you only had these crude terminals and you had to type in these complicated terms to get to your information. Okay, but the idea of the web to connect documents with each other and to relate documents with each other is, of course, not born in the 1990s. This is a much older idea. In fact, already in the 18th century, during the Age of Enlightenment, this concept was used to create the first worldwide covering encyclopedia. It was this French encyclopedia about arts and sciences, and these two people, Denis Diderot and Jean-Baptiste Laurent d'Alembert, they both worked for more than 20 years to collect articles for this encyclopedia. And in an encyclopedia, you know that if you describe something, then you have to make these articles self-contained. It means everything should be explained. And you do not want to explain the same thing over and over again in several articles. Therefore, you refer to the explanation of something that stands on another place. And here they have the same concept of relating one thing, one concept, or one article to another article. So this kind of encyclopedia, one of the predecessors of today's Wikipedia, they really make nothing else but the web. It's a huge set of articles, and they are related to each other with the help of hyperlinks, with references, simple text references. So this was a huge success, this first encyclopedia. Overall, it was 35 volumes, more than 20,000 pages, 71,000 articles. They had almost 150 people working on that, more than 2,000 large illustrations. So it was really huge what they created. But the difficulty then to surf inside this encyclopedia, for example, if you compare it with today's web, was of course much more difficult. There were concepts like this reading wheel, where you can access very quickly several books that were already folded up on a specific article. But of course, this is a rather difficult user interface, and they haven't thought about the usability. So it took until the 90s until you get these hypertext systems. But there were ideas about hypertext systems earlier. For example, here, Vannevar Bush, he visualized the hypertext system Memex, which wasn't, of course, realized in 1945, but it was a described concept where you can put knowledge on the basis of microfilm into a disk and relate with each other with some kind of electronic logic, and then to enable linking between these microfilm pictures of photographs with the knowledge, with the information inside on your desk. So it was information at your fingertips now 70 years ago. And based on that concept, things like the web you know today in the end were created. So what was responsible for the success of the web? It was, of course, the browser and the way it was really simple to make use of the information, to access the information. So this is one of the very earliest browsers. It's Lynx. It was in 1993. It's a text-based browser, and there you used your keyboard to navigate inside the web documents that did not contain graphics by the time. But already in the following year, the first graphical web browser was created, the NCSA Mosaic web browser, and there you had the mouse as input device, and simply by clicking on one of these blue links, you are able to navigate the entire web. Today, you even don't need a mouse. You can do this with your fingertip, for example, at one of these tablet computers. And in the future, who knows, maybe you will do it with your eyes or simply by your thought, as you can see here with the Google Glass device. So the web itself, we know that the internet itself grew, and it's constantly growing. By now, there are almost more than 1 billion computers constantly connected to the web, so they have fixed addresses, and you can look it up here. There is an Internet Domain Survey host count, and they publish every half a year, they publish the new number, and this is a constant growing curve. But not only the amount of information in the web has grown, also the way how information in the web is consumed and produced has changed over the time, because now the web is almost 25 years old. So what changed in these now 2 generations, some people also speak of 3 generations of web, is that the focus of the information creation has changed since the beginnings in the web. So in the first half of the web in the 1990s and the beginnings of the 2000s, in the web 1.0, there were only professionals who were able to create websites and who were able to put their information on the web. But in the 2000s, something came up which provided more interactivity for the user. So simple applications like, for example, weblogs or webkeys, they enable the user who has no expert knowledge also to bring his own information into the web and to share it. So this social networking and this collaborative information creation stuff that is now in the web since the times of Web 2.0, they are responsible for the huge boom and the change in the information age that we focus today. So the web has changed, everybody has the possibility to put his information on the web, and therefore, of course, the growth of information in the web also exceeds every limit. But one thing you should be careful, and the recent past shows that it's important to be careful which information is put on the web and how you deal with your information. You just have to keep in mind that the web is based on a public infrastructure and public protocols and public data transfer. So it means that everybody, if he wants to, is able, if he has the means to do this, to get access to information that is not meant to him, because it's a public infrastructure and it's a public protocol. And you see here Edward Snowden and the NSA affair. Of course, information is out there and it only waits to be collected. But to make some sense of it, and here we close the loop, we have to know what all this data and information really means. And this means that the NSA, for example, does a lot of so-called knowledge engineering. Data mining technology, for example, also refers to knowledge engineering, to make use of the data that is collected, to understand the data, and then to decide which action has to be taken on basis of the knowledge that is extracted from this data. Okay. So next thing we want to do is we want to look at the limits of the current web. And you will see this in the next section of this lecture.